here as I described it before, 38-inch pintail, inverted to give you a rocker, and all around another carving board. Can't really do kick turns, so a lot of guys on the internet laugh at the pintail shape. They think it's a very unfunctional shape, when in certain senses it is, when you have the drop speed that's all cut for your wheels not to hit the bottom of the board. But this shape has been around a long time. I piddled with it for a long time to figure out exactly how you're going to set up a pintail shape to make it useful for you. It doesn't really matter. This shape is not so functional. Normally, if you put a 180 millimeter truck on here, you got your wheels sticking out on the side. The cutout is so that when you turn, your wheels aren't going to hit the bottom of the board. Well, I don't like running a 180 millimeter truck. It's too wide for this. This is a Bennett, so you just put your riser pad on there, softens out your ride, makes carving more pleasant because you have a softer underpinning. So the shape of this board, not really functional in the highest sense. If you did put the 180 millimeters on the front and the back, it would be functional if the wheels don't hit the bottom of the board. I have another car checking me out at this place. So what you can see is the next important to carving is pumping the board, something that Stacy Peralta figured out way back in 1977, riding an original Z-Flex Zephyr board with a little teeny short grip truck and little teeny 56 millimeter 92A Cadillac wheels. I have that board, but I changed the setup to make it more valuable. If you would see where the aesthetic of pumping came from, this little thin board that he rode with these extremely narrow trucks and wheels, the balance that you have to be able to do that particular style of surf skating. What Stacy figured out, and what I'm saying how to pump the board, is by using your back foot and the flex of the board, you can actually propel yourself forward by your movement on the board. And I tried to demonstrate that a little bit. I'll show you again. So basically this 38-inch pintail, the whole goal of this was to make it a pleasant as ride as possible, which basically is pretty much as close to surfing in the ocean as you can get, where you have a huge cushion of water. It's most people that don't know what the spiritual connection is, but when you actually have to open yourself up and feel the flow of the water, it's not just about you, it's about you tuning into nature. This board turned out, after many, many years of poking around trying to figure out how to set it up, this definitely is the best with the rocker this way. Here again I got people nosing around because this is a private medical complex, but I think they see that I'm not really hurting anybody. 44-inch pintail, reverse kingpin truck is different than the Bennett's, which is Bennett came out with the original Gordon and Smith Fiberflex, and back in the late 1970s that was the Cadillac of all skateboards. The Bennett was made of aircraft aluminum. It was a taller truck. It had taller cushions that were soft and you could turn on a dime. Basically revolutionized the skateboard industry. There were 3 different sizes. The original Bennett Hijacker, which was a narrow axle, the Bennett Pro, the Bennett Pro Ad Track, which put a little washer on either side, and then eventually the Bennett Vector came out, were by far the truck of choice for pretty much everybody back then, especially those guys doing slalom. What you do see a differentiation of is that the Bennett, although the Z-Boys did learn to carve a pool with the Bennett originally because it was narrow enough that you could turn sharp enough to be able to carve the inside of a tight bowl. You couldn't grind on the lip of the pool with the Bennett because it has a square axle casing. So the trackers came in, the mid-track, well, they're 5 different sizes, a half-track, mid-track, full-track, X-track, and a 6-track. It's a lower truck, still turns equally as sharp, but the axle is rounded such that you could grind on the lip of the pool. So it was pretty much half and half. The Bennett started the craze, but the pool skaters pretty much turned over and started using trackers because you could grind them on the edge of the pool. Completely not having anything to do with this particular board. This is a Paris 150mm truck with a reverse kingpin, so you can go downhill and the front truck won't slalom. It's a speed truck, but also it has to be able to carve too. This board is another, you should be able to pump and carve on this board pretty much like that pintail. A little more stability because it's longer. Oh, I got this set up wrong. Truck too far forward on the back. Probably worth noting now that there are 2 different stances that you can use. Whenever you carve, you don't necessarily have your foot in the kicktail in the back here, which is what you're going to do if you want a kick turn, which is what I was trying to do. I need to bring this back truck back to the different hole set here because I have a little bit too much tail that makes me kick turn too fast. 2 different stances. When you carve, don't necessarily need to have your back foot on the kicktail. Like surfers did, you can walk around freely, put your feet anywhere on the board that you so desire. Back in the day when they surfed, probably the first trick that they did was a hang 10, where they just walked to the front of the board. I'm going to hang on to my truck here. They just walked up to the front and hung both 10 toes over the front of the board. Surfing, you move your feet freely on the board at any given time for variety's sake. If you're going to change that up and you're going to try and kick turn, basically you have to go back to the other stance, which is where you put your back foot back here traditionally, and if you want to do so in the highest form of the art, you should be free to move your feet around the board extemporaneously using many different approaches as you skate. Adds more variety and makes it more fun. Cool. Start a new video.